Hi, I'm OMFG Really Nikki, and this video is 5 bad credit habits. Credit can be really complicated and it can be really tricky when you don't know what you're doing, and I know people even in their 30s and 40s that still don't know that much about their credit or understand how credit works and how to build credit and also how to use credit responsibly. I know people that are like I said, in 30s and 40s, and they're still kind of using credit in negative ways that are only hurting them. And I hate seeing people in bad situations like that. So that is what this video is about today. This is just 5 basic things that I think are definitely fundamental things that you should know, and they're just important. So the first one is using your credit cards as an emergency fund. You can never honestly have that mindset where, oh, you know what, it's not a big deal. I can just buy this and pay for my car payment on my credit card, or I can pay this bill on a credit card. The thing is, when you're in that situation, you have no other option, and you have to do that, that's one thing, but don't have that mindset where you're thinking of it as an emergency fund or a backup. That should be the absolute last resort, and even then, it should be really a difficult decision to make, because you do not want to get in the habit of just constantly charging up your cards for anything, and definitely not using it as an emergency fund. You need to save money in a savings for emergencies. You should always have a savings, and truthfully, I think if you're in a situation where you're in debt and you're trying to pay things off, you should still make it a point to put something in the savings and at least have a couple $100s, which that's not even very much, but realistically you want several thousand, but you should always have something in your savings as well. Okay, so don't use your credit as an emergency fund. Don't have that mindset, please. Number 2 is treating your credit card like it's a liquid asset. If you don't know what a liquid asset is, it would be like cash. If I go to the store with $20 and that's the only payment I have, if I try to buy something that's $22, they're going to be like, no, you got to put something back. I cannot purchase anything over $20. When you're spending money on a credit card, you have it's a different type of money. For one, even if you have $1,000 limit, that you don't have $1,000. You're going into debt. No matter, even if you put $20, you are negative $20 when you use that. It's not a positive thing. If I spend a $20 bill, I'm not negative or positive, I just don't have that money anymore. So you can't think of or use credit cards in that way, because it's not the same thing. And so many people are using their cards that way, and it's creating this huge amount of debt. And then it just kind of is like a spiraling cycle, because you almost feel like you can never get out of it. So you need to not be in the habit of using your cards that way in the first place. Because truthfully, the best way to stop from doing that is to just not do it. Which sounds simple, but sometimes things are a lot simpler than people make them. But definitely don't use your credit or think of it as a liquid asset, because it's not. Anytime you are putting money on a card, you are negative. I mean, it's essentially like you overdraw on a bank account, because you may not have an overdraft fee, but you're getting charged interest. And a lot of times when you add up the amount of interest for any purchase, you're probably paying more than an overdraft fee for that item. Okay, number 3, only paying the minimum on your for your monthly payments. When you have credit and you're only paying the minimum, that's literally just enough to get by. You're a lot of times on balances, they're charging you an interest that's almost the equivalent of your payment. So let's say you're getting charged $22 in interest every month, but your monthly payment is $25. So you're only actually paying $3 a month to the balance you owed before. That's going to take you forever to actually get out of debt, years, even for a small balance. So it's really important to pay more than the minimum. If you have multiple cards and you can't afford to do that, what I do is I look at the utilization. What card do I have that's closest to being maxed out? Let me focus on getting that card down, or whatever has the highest interest rate, something like that, so that you can pay it down from what it is or pay it off. And then just kind of once that one's paid down or paid off, focus on a different card. Essentially, you'd like to pay it off, but sometimes you kind of have to sometimes it's a balancing act. Some people would say don't do that, but I think realistically sometimes you have to. So you kind of have to figure out what situation is the best situation for you, but always try, even if it's only $5 or $10, whatever you can do. I usually, if I have a credit card that tells me you have to pay $100 a month, I usually try to pay $2. Or if I have to pay $25, I'm going to try to pay $50. it just depends on whatever that particular card requires. And if I have more than that, there's one card that my minimum payment is like $60. I pay $250 a month because it's kind of a higher balance and I want it paid off as soon as possible because I don't want to keep making that payment anymore. Okay. Number 4 is spending more than 30% of your limit. This is one thing that a lot of people struggle with, especially if you have bad credit or you have low limits. You honestly should not be spending more than 30% at the maximum. Truthfully, credit cards only want you to really like use maybe 10%. But if you have a $300 limit, that's like $30. So if you're using more than 30%, I'm not that great at math. I want to say for a $300 card, you should not be spending more than like $70 or like about 65-ish, because you don't want to go over that limit. Because as soon as you go over that limit, it puts you in a riskier category. So it's going to make it harder for you to get a limit increase, for you to get other credit cards. So it's not really helping you build credit if you're constantly over that 30% mark. And that may seem stupid, like, why are they giving me $1,000 if I can only spend this much? Because they want you to use it responsibly. They're not giving you the money, because truthfully, they didn't give you $1,000. They gave you a card and will let you go into debt up to $1,000. And that's the difference. Like, people think like, oh, they gave me this limit, like it's just money. It's not. They essentially gave you a negative bank charge. That's how you need to look at it. Am I willing to get a negative bank charge for this? Am I willing to get that overdraft fee? Because essentially your interest is the equivalent. Most people will do anything they can to avoid that overdraft fee, so you need to think of your credit essentially in that same way. Like, you don't want that extra fee if you can avoid it. So maintaining lower utilizations helps your credit drastically. It will help your credit grow very fast, and it will help you get better scores, but also it makes it a lot easier when you're paying stuff off. Because if you have a $1,000 limit and you only have $300 used, it's a lot easier to pay off $300 than it is to pay off $1,000. So that's honestly one of the biggest ones, is you really need to not max out your cards and not go over the 30% mark. And if you're not sure what it is, what I do is I have a little sheet and I will write down my limit and then like figure out where's 30%. So I know if I'm using that card that I don't go over that mark. Like if I'm trying to buy something and it's going to go over that, a lot of times I just won't do it because I don't want to mess up my credit. My credit's not perfect as it is. I'm still working on that, but I definitely have like improved it, and it's actually not bad. It's just not perfect, you know? So that's something that's super important, staying below that 30% mark. And honestly, trying to stay even lower than that is even better. Because if you're right at 30%, like, I don't know that that's super helpful either. So even like, 22%, 25%, like somewhere low. And the thing is, it may be disappointing because you're like, oh, I wanted to use this credit. But the truth is, unless it's something that's actually vital and important, you shouldn't be using credit cards anyway. Credit is not actually for you to just go shop with. That's not what it's for. They will let you do that, and like stores will encourage you to do that, but that's not what credit is supposed to be used for. And the last one is making late payments. And the thing is, I know a lot of people know, duh, you don't make late payments. But the thing with that is, I know people that will just let their payments get late rather than call the company and say, hey, I'm going through a situation. Is there any way maybe I can skip this month, or can I have like a few extra days? If you tell the company what's going on, a lot of times companies will work with you and won't even charge you that fee. I can't say that for all of them, but in my experience, every credit card I've ever dealt with, that when I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be late, I don't have the money, my payment didn't come in time, they were always willing to push things back to, put a note on my account that they would waive the fee, and they would work with me. So I'm not getting more of that fee, more fees going on, essentially. It's not costing me any extra. Don't just let your account go negative. Don't let it go late, because that will affect your credit score drastically. You can literally lose so many points overnight because you just didn't do what you needed to do for your card. And a lot of times when you call them, they're not going to mark it late. They're going to say, okay, you've been paying for 6 months. You've never been late before. We're going to trust you on this. We're going to give you an extra week, whatever. Just doing that can save your score by so much. So obviously if something happened and you're going to be late, you can't avoid it. There's nothing you can do, but you can, as soon as you realize it, call the company. Like if you call them after it's already late, it's going to be a problem. You need to be ahead of your finances, be making sure you're budgeting and looking ahead. So you know, like, oh my gosh, like my checks, like the day after that payment is due, I need to call like right now and let them know, hey, this is the situation. Can you work with me? And 9 times out of 10, they absolutely will. That is everything for this video. I'm sorry if I talk really fast and I get very, like, I get anxious. I don't know why. I'm talking to a camera. I'm not even talking to, like, a live person. But I get that, like, breathy, like, anxiety. I think it's because, like, I feel very passionately about this, and I really, truly want to help people, and I want to see people do so much better. And I know, like, there are several people in my life, like, people in my family, that don't do these things, and like I hope that they will watch this and that it will help them, because I'm guilty of doing all of these things in the past myself. And the reason why I'm talking about it now is because I wish people would have told me about the things that I've sadly had to learn the hard way about. So my videos, especially on finances, are just based on things that I've experienced. I'm not like a financial expert. I just know, based on my credit, things that I've done, things with money, whatever, like I've dealt with a lot of different things and I've gotten through a lot of things, and pretty much everything that I've learned, I've had to learn the hard way, like the hardest probably way you could do, because I tend to be a little bit stubborn and like I don't do things the way that people probably should. I try to do them my own way, and then I end up wishing like, oh, you know, I probably should have listened to that. So hopefully other people are smarter than me and will learn from these videos and other financial videos. I always like to watch a good financial video on YouTube. I subscribe to several people just because there's so much information out there, and like you should never stop learning about anything. But finances is such a huge thing because we all have bills, we all have payments, we all, you know, we're all probably not in situations we necessarily want to be in. Maybe we don't have the living situation we want, and I want to see that improve for everybody. So if you liked this video, if you found it helpful, or if you have any information to add, I always am happy to have a discussion about it. I'm always glad to hear like what people have done, what works for you, what didn't work for you, because we're all different. Everything doesn't always work the exact same, but for a lot of things, for finances, there kind of is like a set path where you need to do things a certain way, because we don't get to choose how they do credit. You know what I mean? Like we have to follow their rules. So just being aware of how things work can change things so much. So thank you so much for watching, and I hope you guys are having an awesome day.